So today we're going to be learning about piece values. So the answer to last week's puzzle, when you had to find out how black was forking white, pause the video right now if you haven't done so already. And the answer is the C2 bishop is forking the A4 king and the D1 rook. So now, since the king is in check, it'll have to move and the rook will be captured by the bishop. So the king can move to 8 squares in the center of the board, and it's pretty limited. But if it gets checkmated, that's the end of the game. So the king is worth the entire game. And it's so important that it doesn't even get a point value. The queen in the center of the board can move to 27 squares. And since it's so active and can move to a lot of squares, it is worth 9 points. The rook, it can move to 14 squares in the center of the board, and it also can get to any square it wants to in 2 moves, as long as there's no obstacles. So since it's not too limited, but it's pretty good, it gets 5 points. Now here's the bishop. It can move to 13 squares in the center of the board. It is worth 3 points because even though it's so active and mobile, if there is, say, a rook on b6 or a rook on a dark square or any piece on a dark square, it would be impossible for the bishop to capture it. Unless, like, the rook moved to a square that was capturable by the bishop. But now that the rook is on a dark square, the bishop can never get it, no matter how many turns it takes. So, next is the knight. It can move to 8 squares, but it can jump over pieces, and it's really good at giving forks. So, it is worth 3 points, just like the bishop. And the pawn in the starting square can move 2 or 1, and if it's not on the starting square, it can move 1 square. And it's pretty useless since it's so immobile. But it still gets 1 point because, say, if the pawn was on the 7th rank or the 2nd rank if it was a black pawn, and went to the 8th rank or 1st rank if it was a white pawn, it could turn into a queen, or a rook, or a knight, or a bishop, depending on the situation. But it's a really good pawn. So, now that you know the point values, I want you to tell me if this trade is worth it, and I'll tell you the trade. And the general rule is whichever piece is higher in value, if the other piece is higher in value, then you should definitely trade. If your piece is higher in value, then you shouldn't. And if they're the same in value, then it really depends on the position. But sometimes it will be bad to capture something that's more value than you, and sometimes it'll be good to capture something that's less of value, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad for if it's the same. But in this puzzle, if it's more value, then it's more valuable and you should capture it. So I want you to tell me if it's worth it for the knight on e4 to capture the f6 queen. You have 30 seconds to think, starting now. If you need more time, you can always pause the video. Remember that. Time is up. The correct answer is that it is definitely worth it to capture the f6 queen, even though you're going to lose a knight. Right now, you're down by 6 points, since the rooks are worth 5 points, the knight is worth 3 points, and the queen is worth 9 points. So 5 plus 3 is 8, and 5 plus 9 is 14, and 14 minus 8 is 6. So black is up by 6 points. But after capturing the queen with the knight, and then the rook capturing back, they both have a rook, and it's 5 points for both, which is equal. And equal is better than being down points in most positions. So it is definitely worth it to capture. So in this position, you have to tell me whether it's worth it for the rook on d3 to capture the d7 bishop. And note that it is going to get captured back by the knight on f6. You have 30 seconds starting now, and you can always pause the video if you need more time. Time is up. The answer was that it is not worth it in this position to capture the bishop with the rook, because the rook is worth 5 points and the bishop is only worth 3 points. And 5 is more than 3. And right now, white is up in exchange, meaning that they have a rook for a minor piece, such as a knight or a bishop. They're both the minor pieces. And since the knights are equal, we have a rook and a bishop. And the bishop is worth 3 points, and it's a minor piece. And the rook is worth 5 points, and it's a major piece. So if the rook were to capture the bishop and the knight were to capture back, then it would be equal. And being up in exchange is better than being equal in most positions. So in this point, it is better to capture the knight instead of the bishop with the rook. So, your turn. You have to tell me if it is worth it to capture the f7 pawn with the f4 queen. So the answer will be in next week's video, and I hope you enjoyed. So if you have any feedback, you can post it in the comments or the form in the description of videos, and the form is completely anonymous, so I won't know who filled it out. Please hit that like button, subscribe for more videos like this one, because it takes a lot of time and effort to make these videos. You can visit the chess playlist to see all of the chess videos, and I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.